Okay, so in this video we're going to start discussing radical functions and their domain. What we're going to think about is the fact that it has a radical. Okay, so because it has a radical, we can't have negative values. Or I should say the result should not be negative. Okay, so for example, I could put in potentially a negative number, but if the whole thing ends up being positive, then that's okay. So for example, if x was negative 2, that means I'd have negative 2 squared minus 16, so 4 minus 16, the square root of negative 12. Well, I can't do this. This isn't going to work. But if I had, for example, negative 5, and I put in a negative 5, that would be 25 minus 16, and that would be root 9, which is 3. That does work. So what values are going to allow me to graph this, have real values, not imaginary values? So the boundaries are going to be zeros. So if we find the zeros, that's going to help us find the boundary as to where it works and where it doesn't work. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take x squared minus 16 and set it equal to 0. And I solve. I take the square root, and the zeros are going to be plus or minus 4. Now, in conjunction with the graph, I'm going to be able to state my domain of this radical function. So I need to find the zeros. So that was my first step. So I'm going to find the zeros. And the last part is I'm going to graph. Now, we can kind of do this with without a calculator, and the idea is we want to think about what's on the inside. So using your graphing calculator, what I'd like for you to do is just graph the function x squared minus 16. And if I graph it without the radical, it's a parabola that goes through these two zeros. The results that are positive are here and here. So that means anything to the right of 4 and anything to the left of negative 4 for just x squared minus 16 will provide a positive value. So looking at that, it tells me, hey, just looking at the inside, ignoring the radical, these are the numbers that are going to give me a positive value. So using the zeros and with the graph of the parabola, I can identify that my domain, let me write it appropriately, my domain is going to be x, where x is greater than or equal to 4, or x is less than or equal to negative 4. And that is going to be my solution, my domain. One other way to graph it, now without a calculator, this might be, I feel that this is a little bit more difficult. Without a calculator, knowing how parabolas work, I know it opens up because it's positive and I know where the zeros are. I can do this general shape without graphing it on a calculator. If I had a calculator, what I would do, so this would be a no-calc, so let me write that. So this is a no-calc method. If I had a calculator, let me move this up a little bit and over. If I had a calculator and I graphed it, and go ahead and do this, we're going to go ahead and graph the function of the square roots of x squared minus 16. I'm going to get this piece right here. And careful, sometimes the calculator, if you zoom in, it has like this empty space right here. Please understand that the zeros do work. And so notice this would be what I would graph and get on my calculator if I plug the whole thing in. And it fits the same description. Notice that if we look at this piece right here, we have the less than negative 4. Our graph, it goes when x's are less than negative 4. And then I look at the greater than 4 and I get the same thing. So I just get those ends of the parabola, and there's this empty space down here because we can't have negative values coming out of our square root. There's no way that this guy's going to end up being negative. And that's how we can work with domains of radical functions.